Test. Test one. Okay.
Beth, 1, 2. Good.
Hello, everybody. This is my absolute favorite time because before I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be a talk show host. And so this is a great opportunity for me to fulfill that fantasy. So my name is Tony Negron. I'm the executive director for the Florida Wind Band, and this is Matt McCutchen, and he's our music director. So this is a great opportunity for us to dive into the program together because most of the wind band music we all really don't know because it's new. So let's start with the first piece.
Sure.
The Hounds of Spring. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, can we start with just the whole overall,
how
we put it together. So the title of the program is In the Spring. And so typically what we do when we put a program together is often we start with a piece. In this particular time, the A piece was In the Spring at the time kings go off to war, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then you start looking around to see what fits the theme. At USF, we have a library of about 2,500 pieces or so I can go to the library, type in spring, and see what comes up. And Hounds of Spring came up, was the first one, and which is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful piece. It was written by Alfred Reed. Alfred Reed wrote for the band better than just about anybody else in history. His openings of all his pieces are glorious. This is a piece, interestingly enough, that the high school that I attended played the year before I got there, and the whole year all the upperclassmen just kept talking about the same piece, Hounds of Spring, Hounds of Spring. So, and it was years before I got a chance to play it, and it's just fun. And the piece is about exactly what you would think about. It's about young love, and so it starts off with the excitement of young love, and then in the middle it goes to more romantic, and then it ends about as excitingly as any piece in our repertoire. So I think you're really going to enjoy it, Hounds of Spring.
So now, those of you who have been following us for a while know that Matt and I begin planning these concerts pretty much 1 year in advance. So when you look in your concert program, you'll see that we already have next season already pre-planned. So when we started planning this concert, we kind of have to gauge things a little bit around our concerto soloist, because last year we started a concerto competition, and our youth ensembles, there's a winner. And so you'll see Kaiden Klingler later, and we'll talk about his piece a little bit. So depending on the length of the concerto, sometimes our programming has to change slightly. So let's talk about the second piece of music. So the first piece of music is Hounds of Spring. We all know Alfred Reed. He's kind of like a band staple. So what made you program In a Gentle Rain?
Well, Tony, you made me program In a Gentle Rain.
Okay, so let's talk about this piece real quick. I have been telling Matt about In a Gentle Rain since, I think, when I was in undergrad. So we're talking 20 years ago. I have fallen in love with this piece. And so now this is the first opportunity that actually Matt will get to hear the history on this as well. So the year was 2004. I had made All-State Band, and Robert W. Smith had composed this piece, and the All-State Band was premiering this, and I was in the ensemble. And I will never forget it because we were downtown at the Sheraton, which is where one of the bands will rehearse for FMEA in January. And my mom was taking me back and forth, and she would sit through the rehearsals, have to go to work, come back, pick me up, do all the things that all great parents do. And I remember, I think we were getting out of rehearsal at 10:30 at night or something, and she sat in on the last part of the rehearsal, and I asked, Mom, what was your favorite piece? And she said, oh, that piece with the rain was just so relaxing after a long day of work. And I said, oh, I hate this piece. This is the worst piece on the program. You are not gonna like this. And she said, no, Tony, sometimes life is so busy and life is so crazy. Sometimes you just need something to just relax you and take all of the chaos out of your life. And then I remember the next day, because it's kind of a 3-day weekend. The first 2 were the rehearsals, the next day was the concert. And I remember sitting on the stage for the first time, really having the opportunity to kind of just soak in the piece and really enjoy it. And that was the first time I think I had decided that I probably wanted to do music as a career, because sometimes we have the difficult things, we have the challenging works, we have the complexities, but sometimes we have to pair it with something that is just really, really simple. And what I hope, since I was the one that really pushed this piece on the program, that you all enjoy it like my mother enjoyed it. And that is just to really sit back and close your eyes and ignore the hustles and bustles of the world and just kind of be in the moment. Because simplicity is a nice thing from time to time, especially with everything going on in the world.
And you'll hear some techniques in this piece, and it's really written for like middle school level players. It is not difficult technically. But you'll hear some neat things. You'll hear rain, and it's just snapping. And they'll start by snapping slowly, and as the rainstorm comes in, they'll snap more quickly. There's a thunder sheet in the back that really does sound like thunder, and it's just a giant piece of metal, of flimsy metal that you shake. And at the end, as the last little drips are coming off of the steeple, it's a pan, and he's just playing a pan with his thumb. So it's a clever piece. It's not a terribly challenging piece, but it is clever.
Yes. So then that brings us to the third piece on the program. So talk to us a little bit about the Maslanka and what is involved in our student concerto competition.
So the David Maslanka is an incredibly influential composer, wrote 10 symphonies well, 8 of them are for wind band. Very spiritual, very deep, and he wrote, I think, 7 concerti, and this was the first time I'd actually heard this one. This is a concerto for alto saxophone and wind band, and we're playing the first movement of it. Our soloist is Kaiden Klingler, who is a senior he's only a senior for a couple more days, I guess, really, maybe 2 weeks, and then he won't be a senior anymore, at Wesley Chapel High School. As part of the umbrella of the Florida Wind Band, we have 2 youth ensembles too, and Kaiden's played in the top one of those for the past 3 years. And he came in, and we had a concerto competition, and I think he played the best audition I've heard a high school student play, and I've been around high school students for a very long time now. And it's a really pretty magnificent because it's got some places in it that are just, his fingers are flying. I mean, it's super fast. But the majority of it is not. The majority of it is long, which enables him to do a couple things. Enables him to, you can hear the beauty of the saxophone. And the other part is it enables him to play very, very softly. And bands don't always play softly, really. We're really good at loud. But in this particular concerto, it's written, he's accompanied sometimes just by marimba and piano and bassoon, and he can be really expressive, and I think you're going to enjoy it. The piece has nothing to do with spring whatsoever. In fact, the inspiration was he was walking around in Montana in the winter and saw some flowers coming through, so I couldn't use that. But I was going to put that he's a spring chicken, but that didn't sound very nice either. So, but he did win the concerto competition. I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy his performance.
All right, and then next on the program, we have Easter Monday on the White House lawn. Matt actually does such a great job during the rehearsals. So even though we're a professional ensemble, most of us have played all of these pieces at some point in our careers or our high school experiences or honor band experiences. Sometimes we come across a piece that we should have played but then haven't played, and this is probably one of those for, I would say, 80% of the band. So part of what goes into a rehearsal process is Matt is obviously doing his due diligence to ensure that the ensemble is coming together. We're making artistic music, we're making musical decisions, fixing phrasing, and all sorts of things that us high-quality musicians are really working on. But then sometimes there comes these works, which we've all kind of heard before, but then we need a little bit of a history lesson. So it's funny because I thought that this was a march, and then I was very well corrected last night that this is not a march. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it's written by Sousa, and when you hear the name Sousa, automatically you think march. He's the March King, 132 marches. That's what he's best known for, but he wrote a lot. He wrote operas, he wrote symphonies, he wrote, a lot of his have disappeared, but he wrote incidental music, he wrote for orchestras, he wrote all sorts of music. And this was a particular piece, and you'll hear a little bit more of the history when we're going. But it sounds march-like, but it was very specifically not a march. And I learned this my first semester of undergraduate at Furman University, and it was homecoming, and my band director came up and he said, "So Matt, what's your favorite piece on the concert?" And I said, "Well, I think it's Wedding Dance." And he said, "No." And if any of you know John Carmichael, you'll understand. "No, that's not your favorite." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well," and I thought for a minute, and I said, "Well, I'm not really crazy about the Sousa March." He said, "It's not a march, try again." And I will always, every time this piece comes up, I will think, not a march, not a march. It's incidental music. It's not, you know, marches indicate we're moving somewhere, and for this one, it's about watching children roll eggs on the White House lawn on Easter Monday, which is still a tradition. And while it definitely has march-like qualities, it is not a march.
It is not a march, I assure you, and you will definitely enjoy it, especially the clarinet feature in measure 88. So just count to 2, 88 times, and then you'll see exactly where we play. All right, so now let's talk about what is our mission and goal in terms of bringing high-quality wind ensemble performances to the community, and how does that connect to Only Light and Only Love?
So in Tampa, there are so many opportunities for entertainment. We know this. We deal with this at the university. Everybody deals with it. We have beaches and theme parks and orchestras and professional sports and high school sports. This is a particular art that has been around for a very long time, has been really important in the American tradition, and we think it's worthy of continuing to do on a very high level. One of the problems is that if I were to say in the general population, name me 5 orchestral pieces, non-orchestra lovers could do it pretty easily. If I were to say, name me 5 wind band pieces, we'd get stumped a little bit. And our history has a lot of transcriptions. We play a lot of orchestral pieces. We play a lot of choral pieces. We've borrowed from others. But we have really, really wonderful music that is written especially for us. And the piece he's referring to, Only Love, Only Light, is only about 5 years old. It's written by a composer in South Carolina. It was based on a quote by Martin Luther King that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can. Hatred cannot drive out hatred, only love. And he took that quote and put it into music. And it is slow, it is soft, it is beautiful. You'll hear little interesting things like the piccolo will have some bird calls sort of coming out of the texture a little bit. But it's a wonderful new work to add to all the older works that we have.
Yes. All right, and now the big piece that Matt has programmed everything around in the spring. This was new for me. I had never heard this before. Just to give you a little insight, it's a whole collection of sound. I mean, really, it's just a soundscape because you're going to hear singing, a myriad of percussion elements, chanting. You'll hear all of that in conjunction with many themes that you may know from some of these major orchestral works. And then give us a little background on how this was concocted by Holsinger in terms of the marching band experience.
So David Holsinger, it was interesting. David was teaching, I believe, elementary music, and he was teaching his children. He thought, this is not good music, I can do better than this. And he started writing for himself, and his students, and then a friend heard it and said, I'd like this, can I play it? And then all of a sudden, very quickly, he got very, very big. This particular piece, number one, I just need to warn you, it is going to be loud, okay? I have tried to rein them in. I have failed. It is going to be loud, but that's okay because it's supposed to. And the piece has a lot of cacophony in there when 13 or 14 different things are going on. And the idea is this: it's biblical. It's from the actual term in the spring at the time kings go off to war, and it depicts this. It's very picturesque, and you will hear them coming to encampment, and you'll hear prayer, and you'll hear, and if you're ever going, they seem to be saying something, but I'm not sure what it is, it's because they're speaking in tongues. They're not actually speaking in tongues, some may be, but it's a depiction of speaking in tongues. You'll hear prayer, you will hear wailing, okay? You will hear all sorts of things that depicts the war battles and then retreat, and then war battles and then it's evening. It is melodic at times. It is absolutely not melodic at times. There are aleatoric moments when the players are asked to do whatever they want to. And then there are times that are very specifically written out. So the interesting thing about this is at the time David Holsinger started writing, percussion was becoming more and more accessible. I won't bore you with the whole history of percussion, but needless to say that in the first part of percussion's life, it basically kept time and did emphasis. We need a cymbal crash because something's important. Wind band music is not like this at all. Percussion is every bit as important as everything else, and we have marimbas and xylophones and gongs and timpani and things going all over the place. And so he makes deep use of all the percussion throughout the piece. And when he wrote this back in about 1990, 91, 92, drum corps, and I'm not sure if you know what drum corps are, but drum corps are basically marching bands on steroids. They're people who spend all summer long competing. It's incredibly impressive. And the cadets took this piece and they put it on a field and they cut it down to it's about a 12-minute piece. They cut it down to about 8 minutes and marched it and won the national championship with it. And you'll hear, wow, that sounds sort of like music that would be played outside with a marching band. And from that, they started using, composers started writing more and more percussion, and it's just really exciting. So this is a piece that has, even though it's not terribly old, well, I guess it's 30, oh, it was in college when they wrote it. So yeah, it's getting old. Had changed, and a lot of composers after David Holsinger started writing like Holsinger for a while, so it shifted the momentum of our art.
Well, speaking of shifting, let's shift gears real quick. Matt and I have been having some discussions as of recent. So the Florida Wind Band, if you're not aware, we've been bringing concerts to Tampa Bay for 17 years, and we're embarking on our 18th season next year, and we are very, very excited about this adventure. And pretty much for 18 years of planning, Matt became the music director during the pandemic when Dr. Carmichael, the founder, had retired and moved to Kansas City to be with his family. And coming out of the pandemic, I kind of fell into the executive director role. And one of the challenges that we've been having is we've been having this discussion about what really is a professional organization. And I've been thinking about this, and I wanted to talk to you about this with our community because now I think I've figured it out. And I think what it is it's having an artistic leader like you, and it's having a fundraiser like me, and a community of supporters that believes in our mission in keeping the art alive and spreading it to the community. And in the past 3 years, we have had a tremendous amount of growth. We were in a deficit. We have now tripled our operating budget. In addition to that, we have expanded our concert offerings. We now do chamber series. We also have run-out concerts to other events and locations. We have doubled our educational youth ensembles, one of which, the concerto winner, we've expanded to concerto competitions for students to have additional performance opportunities. So in regards to all of that and summarizing everything that we've accomplished in 3 years post-pandemic, when most groups have folded or weren't able to survive, what else do we do that stands out?
So first, Tony just referred to himself as a fundraiser, which is nice. That is a teeny tiny little bit of what Tony does. The growth that we have seen over the past 5, 6 years is because of Tony and his vision and persistence and ability to get people all on board. I think that what I would say about this, about the Florida Wind Band, is that music is important. And I think you're here because you believe music is important. And they're all playing because music is important. These, we don't do enough talking about the musicians. They are stunning musicians back behind us. And some of them, a lot of them are professional, a lot of them are teachers. They all have music degrees. They're here because it's important. And yes, it's fun, and yes, but it's important, and it's important that we keep this alive. It's important that we share it with the younger ones. I have a 9-year-old who's back in the back, and it's getting harder and harder to do things that aren't instantaneous, instant gratification. Music takes time, music takes work, and this needs to be a part of our culture, needs to be a part of our society. And the other part of this is that it's just, music makes you feel. And that's why we're here. And I'll tell a story of, sorry, Luke, I'm going to do this. This is Luke Rutt, who is our playing piano. It's his first time with us. Luke is kind of an interesting story, but he's at USF, and he's a piano for our wind ensemble, and we just played him as like a concerto. And Luke, and I'm not just kidding, Luke wept through the final movement. And I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you, but he did. And we have 2 other players who can tell. But he wept, and then what happened from that was other players in the ensemble saw that, and they started crying. And then others saw that. And I kid you not, probably a good half of the ensemble, by the end of this really remarkable piece, were sitting there with tears going down their eyes. And there's just not that many things in life that do this anymore. We need to protect this, and we need to build it, and we need to share it with more and more people. And that's why I think the Florida Wind Band is really important.
I think
Sorry,
that is
Luke.
really beautiful.
He promised me he won't cry today.
So now, last thing before we kind of wrap up and get going here. Talk to me a little bit about the rehearsal process and what this production took to put together for our audience today.
The rehearsal process is probably the easiest part of it. We have a staff we have librarians who are copying the music and sending it out. We have personnel directors who are getting the players. It's a whole organizational process before we even get to the rehearsal. And so what you're going to hear is a little over an hour worth of music that had a little over about 3 hours worth of rehearsal, and that's it. We rehearse one time and then play the concert. And so by the time everybody comes to the rehearsal, the music has to be under their fingers. Otherwise, this doesn't work. So we don't just ask them to come for a 3-hour rehearsal. We ask for whatever the amount of time it is before that to prepare. And then when they come, wherever we're rehearsing, you have to get used to the sound. A church sounds very different from a concert hall. It sounds very, very different from outside. And so it takes probably half the rehearsal for the ensemble's ears to get going. But the rehearsal is a celebration. The concert's a celebration. The work has basically been done before that, or otherwise it doesn't happen at all.
Yes. So final thing, and then we'll wrap up to get the concert started. So season 18, we're getting ready to launch all of our concerts. They're in your programs, so mark your calendars now. You can secure your free tickets by scanning the QR codes. What do you want them to know about season 18 and how you've concocted the whole collection of concerts?
All I want them to know is it's great music, and we want an audience.
Yes.
That's really all I want you to know. We've got Sousa, we've got Gershwin, we've got, I don't think we have any Robert W. Smith this time, sorry, but we've got, we have incredible players who get to play incredible music, and we just need an audience. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And we hope that you'll continue, we hope you'll continue coming to the rest of them.
Yes. All right, enjoy the show. We'll see you on the opposite side of things. Thank you.
Good evening. Well, my name is Dan Buffington, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the chairman for the board for this amazing organization. On behalf of the entire organization, I want to welcome and thank you for joining us for today's season finale performance in the spring. It's a full house tonight, and I thank you for coming out and participating. As I look around, I see familiar faces, and I see new ones as well. As you look around, if you're sitting next to someone you don't know, it is evidence of the power of music in community and joining and bringing us together. I want to thank, as we start this evening's performance, we couldn't do this without the generosity and support of so many sponsors. We have the platinum sponsors, Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Rich Lundahl, True Smiles Dental Solutions, our gold sponsors, Fidelity National Financial, Ken and Janet Watts, Tony Negron and Brian Panetta, the Ross family, the Voss and Delaney family, and Uptown Cheapskate. We also have silver, bronze, and support level sponsors as well, who are listed in this evening's program. There's also the support of our artistic and administrative staff and so many dedicated volunteers and incredible musicians that you're going to hear from this evening. Their passion and their talent is truly the heartbeat of the organization and the reason that you'll likely be leaving here smiling or humming a tune or two. Looking ahead, the board has already outlined an ambitious season for next year. Our local goals include striving to increase the audiences in the events, expanding the educational outreach to local schools, diversifying the revenue for the organization from new partnerships and events, and continuing to support the amazing musicians and their ability to continue to provide outstanding performances. If you're inspired, we do have opportunities on the board of directors. It's not a tremendous amount of time, and it gives an opportunity to help support the events by strategic planning, helping to coordinate events, and we would love to have additional volunteers to serve on the board as well. So join us in helping to shape the future of music in the Tampa Bay area, and by providing something meaningful to help entertain, educate, and inspire musical performances. Tonight, we have the opportunity and the benefit of having our Nash McCutchen to be tonight's narrator for the performance. Nash is the wife of the music conductor, Matt McCutchen, and also an active member of the Palma Presbyterian Church community here this evening. She serves as the design and brand manager for the Humane Society of Tampa Bay, where her passion and skills are obvious there on a daily basis. Tonight, she's going to bring that same energy and spirit to helping to weave together the message and the music for tonight's concert with a voice rooted in love and humanity for the arts. Thank you.
Good evening. All right. So many wonderful things happen in the spring. The weather turns warmer, days grow longer, flowers bloom, babies are born, and spring showers replenish the earth. Spring is a time of new beginnings, revival, and hope. We open tonight's concert with a depiction of young love in springtime. The piece was inspired by Algernon Charles Swinburne's poem, "When the Hounds of Spring Are on Winter's Traces." The music captures the twin elements of the poem, the exuberance of youth and the sweetness of tender love. Please welcome the Florida Wind Band with Alfred Reed's "The Hounds of Spring." That was fun. Few things are more relaxing than a spring shower, and our next piece places the audience in the middle of a gentle thunderstorm. As the band plays, close your eyes and imagine you are surrounded by the soothing sounds of a storm passing through. You'll hear the rain begin, the distant rumble of thunder, and the quiet conclusion of the storm, all within the safe and dry confines of this beautiful sanctuary. If you listen closely, you may even hear the final drops of water falling from the steeple in a gentle rain. This brings us to one of the most special moments of the concert. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the winner of the 2025 Bay Winds Concerto Competition. Kaiden Klingler is a senior at Wesley Chapel and has played in the Bay Winds Wind Ensemble for the past 3 years. Next year, he plans to continue his education at Florida State University, where he will be majoring in music education. He is an extraordinary young musician, and tonight we are honored to have him join us on the first movement of David Maslanka's Concerto for Alto, Saxophone, and Wind Ensemble, Fire in the Earth. For many years, American presidents and their families have celebrated Easter Monday by hosting an egg roll party on the south lawn of the White House. Some historians tell stories of informal egg rolling parties at the White House dating back to President Lincoln's administration, meaning this is one of the oldest annual events in White House history. Initially, Washingtonians from all social levels celebrated Easter Monday on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. But in 1878, Easter Monday celebrants were turned away, so they headed up Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House. President Rutherford B. Hayes instructed his guards to let the youngsters through the gates, and the tradition was born. 22 years later, President Richard Harrison invited the Marine Band to perform during the roll, and the conductor of the band was none other than John Philip Sousa. Sousa composed this gem to capture the fun and excitement of the event. We hope you enjoy Easter Monday on the White House lawn. In 1842, British poet Alfred Lloyd Tennyson penned the line, "In the spring, a young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of love." 176 years later, South Carolina composer Leslie Gilreath turned his thoughts to love and wrote a piece that he describes as an affirmation of an undying belief in light and love and the overwhelming need for both in our world today. As his inspiration, he chose this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. This is only light, only love." The phrase, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, is a direct reference to Chronicles 20, verses 1 through 3. This short scripture tells of the gathering of King David's armies under the command of Joab. The legions attack and seize the land of the Ammonites. The subsequent capture and execution of the Ammonite kings, the plunder and slavery of the surviving foe, and the triumphant return of David's army to Jerusalem. Composer David Holsinger's In the Spring, at the time when kings go off to war, uses a variety of musical techniques, including chanting, improvisation, and aleatoric writing, to present a tonal picture of the chaos, pathos, triumph, grief, faith, and tragedy of this Old Testament episode. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war.
Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your attendance, for inviting your friends. We are just eternally grateful to have you in our audience today. If you missed the pre-concert chat, like I said, it takes a community to build this. So I just want to thank you all in the audience again one more time. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. A couple of reminders before we depart ways. In your program, it does talk about our $25,000 matching challenge. That is courtesy of the Hillsborough County Arts Council and the county commissioners. Every dollar matched today through June 30th will be matched dollar for dollar, and it is like doubling your impact on music education right here in Tampa Bay. In addition to that, you can also mark your calendars for our Season 18 concerts coming here at Palma Ceia Presbyterian Church on June 29th. We have our annual patriotic concert. And don't worry, there will definitely be a piccolo making an appearance. I'll make sure we don't spill any water on them so they multiply. We'll just bring one of them. And then finally, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware. You can make an impact in our organization by joining the board of directors. You can join as a volunteer member at our concerts. And if you are a rhythmically gifted percussionist, we would welcome you in the back of the room. And finally, before we let you depart ways, we have one more piece for you, courtesy of being the lightning capital of the world, and that is Thunder and Lightning.